Hi there, I'm Fred Trost, surrounded by 16 deer hunters who got the biggest bucks that we could find to put on this show. Why? Well, this Thursday night is a special night. It's Big Buck Night right here on Michigan Outdoors. We're bringing you this Big Buck Night here on Michigan Outdoors in conjunction with the DNR's Big Buck Contest, which they're running, and we're scoring some of the racks, preliminary scoring here. Jim Hebert from Safari Club is one of our official scorers. Taxidermist Bob Armstrong is also totaling up the points here. We're using the Safari Club International methods. Guys, just continue stacking up the points, and we'll see how these fellows turn out in just a minute. But now I want to get over here and talk to a guy who's not really responsible for deer season in Michigan, but Dave Arnold, you're with the DNR. You guys have obviously done something right in deer management.
Right.
How was this year?
It was an excellent year, Fred. It almost lived up to our expectations. The total kill right now looks like it's about 152,000. When the final count is in, I'm optimistic that it may be up a little bit more than that. So it was really an excellent year.
Well, and we add to that the archery deer kill. Archery season is still on right now.
Right. It's going to run right through New Year's Day. And when we roll that in there, we may be up around our expectations of 175 to 180,000 deer.
Wow. Well, what about the Upper Peninsula? Used to be great. Recent years, it's sort of taken a dip. How was it this year?
Well, it's not too bad. We took about 17,000 animals out of the Upper Peninsula, and here again, when we get the final tally from the mail survey, it may be even a little better.
Where did the big bucks come from in the state?
Well, the big ones came from the Upper Peninsula, believe it or not. So that's a quality deer area.
Well, like the good old days.
Yeah, just about.
And Southern Michigan kicked in its share?
Southern Michigan kicked in its share with about 35% of the big ones, and then the remainder, about 25% of the ones that we have in our trophy contest are right here in this area now.
Only 25%, but this is where the concentration of
This
hunters
is
were.
Michigan's deer breadbasket. It's where we have most of the people hunting, about 500,000 people. And right now it looks as though they took about 90,000 deer out of this area from here down to about here.
But not necessarily the trophies.
Not necessarily the trophies, but you know, the important number to a deer hunter is the difference between one and none. So.
That's right. That's how well we know. Dave, come on over here. I want you to help out Bob Armstrong on the scoring while I'm going to borrow Jim Hebert. Come on over here, Jim. You're the official scorer, one of the official scorers for Safari Club International, which is the technique that the DNR is using in their Big Buck Contest, which we'll be going by here tonight. And I'd like to find out what is the difference between, say, the Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young and Safari Club. For example, this deer obviously stacks up as a great deer any way you score it. But if this was a Boone and Crockett rack, why would it be such a good rack?
Because of the mass and symmetry. All right, the animal is almost perfect in every way. All the tines are evenly matched. It's heavy all the way through. It's a very fine deer. Good example of a typical deer.
Okay, now Boone and Crockett not only measures the length of the main beam on each side, the length of the tines, but they measure the circumference between the tines.
Correct.
And add those into the score.
Correct.
Now they add the length of a tine and the length of the corresponding tine on the other beam. If they're the same, everything's golden.
Right.
If they're different,
You subtract the difference.
subtract the difference. So this means that your Boone and Crockett scoring goes for symmetry.
Correct.
And anything that it detracts from symmetry is down. Now what about, okay, that's a good Boone and Crockett rack. Let's grab another one here. How about this one? How would this score, Boone and Crockett?
This animal, because it has some non-typical points on it. When I say non-typical, they don't conform. There isn't a corresponding point on the other side, such as these over here.
So you subtract these?
These would be minus points in the Boone and Crockett or Pope and Young system.
Okay, now there's an extra point on this side.
Correct.
Of the
So
beam.
that would be a minus point as well.
So you subtract that from the score.
Correct.
Now what about Safari Club? How would the Safari Club scoring differ?
This animal is given credit for what it has. I mean, the beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we shouldn't say that that typical animal is a better deer than this because of its conformity.
This one is more symmetrical.
Right.
But this one gets points for everything it's got.
That's right.
Okay, well, let's look at some of the other ones we have here. Let's grab this one from Jerry Rogers. This is a smaller rack. We had this on the show last week. And this is damaged. It's a 16-pointer.
Mm-hmm.
But this has been damaged. How does that stack up on Safari Club standards?
Well, it would be considered a non-typical deer, and Safari Club or Boone and Crockett methods. There's too many non-typical points to score at anything but a non-typical deer.
So you use a different method for that?
Correct.
Okay, well, we'll get into talking about some of these racks in just a minute. Let's Move on over here. Guys, bring your racks over and we'll get these scored as well. And right now, a lot of hunters wonder, well, a lot of people are going to wonder, why do they just have the antlers? Well, I'd be willing to bet that just about every one of these bucks is going to be mounted, hanging on a wall by somebody like Bob Armstrong. Bob, I want to show you a buck that I mounted, about 15 years ago. How you like it?
Well, it needs a little help.
Well, I'll say, some of the techniques I used weren't quite up to snuff, I guess.
Understand that's your first try at mounting it.
This was my first try at mounting a deer, but let's go to your facilities at Clarkston, find out how the pros mount deer heads. Now, if I were to take my deer to the taxidermist rather than do it myself, I'd expect, Bob, that you fellows would be doing it a little differently maybe than I did about 15 years ago.
Oh, I'm sure methods have changed a lot in 15 years, Fred.
We're starting off the same right now,
Right.
cutting it up the back of the head. You don't want a throat cut deer or any cuts on the underside,
Right, that's right.
but cutting it up the back, I took a long time to do this. Always afraid I was going to puncture the skin.
The skin on a buck this size is really tough, and it takes quite a bit to cut a hole in it, but it can be done if you're not careful.
And I remember it was tough to cut around the antlers.
Around the burr, the base of the antlers is, on a buck this size, is really tough. The skin sticks, and you have to carefully work the knife tip.
Now, I used a scalpel I bought from the taxidermy supply shop, a very small scalpel. What is that you're using?
This is a shoe knife that we just purchased from a shoe repair shop, and then we grind it to the shape we want it, and they hold an edge good, and they work real well.
You work with extremely sharp knives?
Yes, we try to keep them very sharp. You cut yourself more often with a dull knife than you will with a sharp knife.
You're cutting through the nose and the lips and everything so quickly. Oh, you've done a few.
Yes, right.
How many dispos you've mounted over the years?
Oh, gosh, I've been on it 30 years, Fred, so it's pretty hard to say how many.
Possibly thousands.
Probably.
Well, that fellow there was separating the cartilage in the ears, and another fellow's working on another process of scraping the hide.
Removing some of the meat and fat from the skin prior to salting it. Now
Okay,
we're salting
well.
it here and rubbing it right into the skin.
Up till this point, what we did was similar, although I took at least 4 or 5 times as long.
Oh, I'm sure. The first 100 are the hardest.
Now, you say you send your hides off to a furrier?
Yeah, they're fur dressed. It's an oil tan prior to mounting them.
So I recall I just pickled the hide and put borax on it and put it back
That's
on.
the way they used to do them all, and it was perfectly all right, but there was more shrinkage and more cracking around the eyes and the lips.
Yeah, I can see that in my mount right now.
A tan cape doesn't shrink, you see.
The form I got, I sent away to a taxidermy supply house. It was paper mache.
Right. Now the forms we're using today are, and we make our own, they're polyurethane foam, and they're solid, and they're easy to pin to, and they're very durable.
You use a number of sizes and shapes to...
Oh, we have many sizes and shapes and turns, right turn, left turn, straight out.
I also used a paper mache ear.
Yeah, here he's inserting a plastic ear liner, and that's left right in there. That remains in, that holds the ear in the perfect shape.
And then the next step, I just put it back on the form.
Well, here we're just making 100% sure on the moth-proofing part of it. There's a borax powder that's being applied to the skin just prior to mounting it.
And then when we put it on there, my dad and I working on that deer, we didn't... Were you gluing it?
Yeah, we're putting form paste on to keep the skin stuck tight to the form so it doesn't separate.
Well, I had a tough time at this stage sewing it up. Frankly, my deer head looked absolutely ridiculous. My dad and I talked about just quitting, saying, hey, this can't be done. We should have taken it to a taxidermist.
I'm sure the first one I did looked kind of sick, too.
Well, we had to put a lot of clay in around the mouth and the eyes and to fill it out, but this buck fits on here perfectly.
So he's stretching the skin now to make sure it meets down the back of the neck. A tan skin will stretch quite a bit. So you can get the deer back to the full size. If it had a real large neck, by stretching the skin, you can get it back to the large size.
Well, that's the difficulty I had then. See, stretching that hide because it had shrunk up.
Right.
And of course, you finish it off in a matter of how long? Hours?
Oh yeah, probably 2.5, 3 hours. That mount would be hanging on the wall. Then it's got to dry for about 2 weeks to be finished. The
buck on the wall here of our Michigan Outdoors cabin was mounted by Bob Armstrong I don't think we're going to hang up the buck that I mounted 15 years ago. It sort of looks like it's been sucking lemons. So we'll just set that one aside. Move along here to the winners of the Big Buck Night here. These are not the official winners of the DNR's Big Buck Contest, because those won't be tabulated and all the entries won't be in until sometime in January, in time for our Sportsman's Banquet. But these are the fellows who we could get together down here to show you their bucks. Come on, Jerry Rogers. You have a terrific buck, an 18-pointer.
That's what it came up to be.
Boy, I tell you, that's a big buck in anybody's book, and it's the smallest one here tonight.
That's something, isn't it?
We have a Crimea River.
I know, I'll shoot it
16th.
in there.
That's terrific. 108 points it scored. And you got this is what we called the coffee break buck.
Right, yes, the first day.
The first day, you got back from a coffee break just in time to get it. Congratulations, Jerry. Will Schultz from Okemos, 108 7/8 points. The points are about the same as that smaller rack. But how do you explain that, Bob?
Well, they're very symmetrical, but they're not a lot of points. And the more points, the better it score, and the longer the points, the higher it scores.
This would have scored a lot better than Boone and Crockett.
Right, that's correct.
But it's a beautiful rack. You got this.
Perfectly even rack.
This was the buck that you've been hunting, right, Will?
Right, I'd seen it bow hunting 2 days before gun season, and went out gun season opening morning with my son, and there he was.
Congratulations. That must have been exciting.
Thank you.
Jeff Keister from Jackson down in southern Michigan. You were hunting up around that heavy concentration of hunters, Crawford County?
Yeah, right near Grayling.
Wow. This represents how many bucks for your lifetime score?
It's the first one.
Congratulations. 117 points, and that weighed out at 165 pounds.
Right.
Terrific buck. Congratulations. Okay. Boy, look at this. Look at this monster we have. Heavy beams. Jim Haydu from Howell, 126 1/8 points. You were hunting down south, Livingston County?
Yep.
When did you see this buck?
Oh, about 8 o'clock Saturday morning, run across in front of my pickup.
And what did you do? Grab your gun and run?
You know, I just went down the farmer's driveway and took after him.
What a way to do it. Well, congratulations. You lucked out on that one.
Yep. Thank you.
Magnificent rack. Tom Whiting from Romeo.
Right.
Well, you were hunting up in northeast Michigan, up in the club country.
Up in the Pigeon River country, yes.
Sheboygan, up in that area. And this, not to look at it, you wouldn't know, but it's a storybook buck.
Yeah, that's right. That's the only way I can get them.
Is that right?
Got to read the book and let them walk onto you.
You were reading a book at the time?
Yes.
What was the title?
It's all about whitetail hunting.
It was?
Right.
I bet. Had a lot of pictures in it? Right. Okay. Congratulations, Tom Whiting, 126 5/8 points. Bill Farnham from Flint.
Yes, sir, Fred.
You went up across the bridge.
Yes, sir, sure did.
Luce County. You're glad you did, eh?
Yes, sir.
Boy, this buck perked up your day, didn't it?
Yes, it sure did. I had a little rough morning that morning. About 4 aspirin, nice leisurely breakfast, and about 12 o'clock I finally made it in the woods. And
Well, how was the night before?
well, it was a good night. You know.
Okay. Well, you perked up in time to get this 126 7/8 pointer.
Okay,
Congratulations from the Upper Peninsula.
Okay.
John Propsfeld from Freeland, also up in Luce County. You a buddy there of Bill's?
No, I've never met him before.
Well, I'll be darned. Well, you got this buck in a spot that a friend tipped you off on, eh?
Well, he didn't tip me off on it, but he got tired of sitting there. And I came there about 15 minutes later and sat down, and he came along about a half an hour later.
I imagine he was crying a river over that.
Yes, he was.
127 5/8. Tall tines, a beautiful buck. Congratulations, John. Now we have John Bazink from Lapeer, hunting up in Alcona County. Another opening day buck. Golly, you get a buck every year?
No, I've got one about every 5th year.
Well, that's terrific. You've been hunting for 31 years, and this one was spooked by another hunter?
Yes, he was. He was standing in the road relieving, and when he seen it, and then he shot, and it came by me.
Oh, I see your buddy was standing. Well, we won't.
It was a stranger.
Okay, well, anyway, whatever the situation was there, that's a terrific buck, John. You ever seen one that big in the woods?
That was the first.
First one you saw? Terrific. Tim Wall from Rochester. You went as far up in the Upper Peninsula as you can go deer hunting. Ontonagon County, way at the other end. Well, I guess this is old hat for you, huh? Every year, same story?
Not really. That's the first shot I've fired in 12 years of hunting.
Wow. Is that the first buck you've seen in the woods in 12 years?
No, that's the third buck.
Oh, and the other two were
Buck fever.
buck fever. Okay, well, you sure did well on this one.
Thank
Tim Wall from Rochester, 129 1/2 points. Well, look at this one. Tim Kenyon is bringing this in for Steve Nobach. Steve had this on the show a couple weeks ago, and you were hunting with Steve. Steve, we might explain, is in the hospital right now. A little minor surgery.
Yep.
Okay, well, this buck, where was it? It's an interesting story.
It was down in like a marsh, and he was trying to hide, and Steve looked and seen the antlers, and he couldn't believe it. He looked again, and that's when the buck got up.
He got up and he got it. Boy, look at that, 139 and an 8th point. A great rack. Okay, now we have another one. We're getting down to number 6 here from the top. Dan Greavy from Lansing, hometown boy here. You went up across the straits too.
Yes.
You go up there every year?
No, I was mostly just up for Thanksgiving this year. I'm originally from the UP.
Oh, this is a interesting rack. It's so tight, close together. These tines growing so tight. What about the crash that happened after you got there?
After I shot the deer, he took off running and went out of sight. And about 1 second later, I heard a big crash. And when we found him, we figured out what it was. He'd crashed into a big tree, and he must have hit it real square. It was bigger than the spread on the antlers, and they sprung out and wrapped right around it, and the inside tines sunk in over an inch deep. And
Wow.
he was stuck out there
You
hanging
had a
on the
job
tree.
getting that out, but that shows you the strength of these antlers. Congratulations, Dad. John Eddy from Dearborn, also in the Upper Peninsula, Schoolcraft County, 144 and 5/8. You hunt in an area that has less than 1 deer per square mile.
That's right, Fred.
How'd you do it?
Well, it was a blessing. The deer just happened on me the second day of hunting with my 2 boys there. That morning, my oldest son had missed one. About 45 minutes later in the same area, I shot this one, and then 5 o'clock that night, my son Mark shot an 8-pointer.
It's an area that has less than 1 deer per square mile. Terrible place to hunt. I wouldn't go there. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tom Perry from Holt. You also were across the bridge, Gogebic County. And this is your 5th buck in 20
Yes.
years of hunting? Mm-hmm. That's terrific. That scores out at 144 and 5/8. This has a little branching here. Let's look at these tines if we can turn it to the side. Look at the way that these tines branch, just like a mule deer. Why does it do that? You know?
No, it's kind of non-typical, but they do that occasionally.
Kind of non-typical? Would that be scored as a non-typical rack?
Well, no, I think we would score it as a typical, wouldn't you,
It's
Jen?
close to a non-typical.
It's close.
Either way would be okay.
Okay, well, 144 and 5/8, that's right up there, 4th from the top. Thank you, Tom. Ron Crafton from Davison was up in Roscommon County, where there's lots of hunters and lots of deer. 145 and 3/8. Was this an opening day buck?
No, that was second day buck.
Okay, well,
Quarter to
that's
12.
noontime.
Yep.
You stay out all day when you hunt?
No, not usually, but that day I did.
And you will from now on?
Yeah.
Hunt at noon. Well, congratulations, Ron Crafton. Boy, look at the heavy rack we have right here. Fairly tight, but it's scored out at 149 and 5/8. Larry Miller from Lennon. Where did you get this one?
That's Saginaw County on my dad's farm by Marion
Oh.
Springs.
Farm buck. Was it out in the cornfield or?
No, it was in the woods, but he'd been eating corn and beans. You can tell that by size.
Going to be a tasty one as well. Congratulations, Larry. Thank you. Charles Rattering. This is the number 1 buck from the group of 16 buck hunters we have right here from 3 Rivers, and you got this right down in your home area,
Right in the home area, yep. About 5 miles from where I live.
down in St. Joe County. This is your 2nd deer this
Yep.
year?
Yep, first one was bow and this one was rifle. Pretty good.
Well, congratulations. You have the top deer here. We'll see. We'll find out at our Sportsman's Banquet in January if this is going to be the top deer of the big buck contest. Just stay right here. I want to just mention that the success of deer hunting isn't measured in the size of the antlers that you get, but these hunters, of course, have accomplished something or lucked onto something that is a little bit above average. We can all have a lot of pride in the fact that we're hunters, and these fellows sure do, and of their accomplishments. Some people prefer to go to the store and get their meat. I think all of these fellows, didn't you all eat your deer?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the way it is with deer hunters in Michigan. 750,000 hunters went out there trying. Maybe 150, 170,000 got their bucks. And I think we all, as hunters, feel proud and enjoy participating in nature, out in the life and death struggles that occur every day, and there's a beauty in the life and death struggles, a beauty in nature, a beauty in the racks when they're mounted, a beauty in the deer in the woods, a beauty of the deer mounted on the wall, a beauty in the meals we have with the venison. We can be proud of that, and I think as hunters, we are proud to be a part of nature out in the woods while we're hunting and not be apart from it. So I want to thank you all very much for coming down here on the Michigan Outdoors Big Buck Night. I hope you enjoyed the show. Joining us here, I hope you join us here every week on Michigan Outdoors. See you next week.
Rugged shore and woodlands of the north, its history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fisheries. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around again, and all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan. And sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can, it tells you of the beauty in the state of Michigan.